You guys can all hear me? All right, great. So I am going to talk to you guys today about something called Pentesting Chatops. Who here in the room actually knows what Chatops is? Raise your hand. Okay, so that's about the half. Of the half that raised their hand, is it because you saw my talk before? I thought so. All right, so Chatops is basically a really good idea that I stole from GitHub, the company. And it's basically about a sort of a CTF-like workflow that we use for our pen testing company that works really incredibly for us. And I think also for those of you who also do pen testing here in this room, I think it might also work really great for you guys. So, but first, a tiny bit about our company. So we're a bit of a funny, a kind of weird thing. What we are is, first of all, a nonprofit computer security consultancy company. Sounds a bit strange, but basically we're just a commercial front end for a nonprofit back end. The nonprofit back end we support is the NLNet Foundation. But that's actually not important for our story. What's important for our story is that we have a bunch of pen testers that are actually distributed around the world. Okay? We work purely with freelancers, and the head of my pen test team, for example, is this Dutch guy who lives in Brisbane, Australia. That's far away. I've got some pen testers that are located in, well, of course, the majority of them are in the Netherlands and in Europe. I've also got staff members in the United States. So basically we've got pretty much every time zone covered. Of course, which is both a blessing and a curse, right? I mean, it's a curse because, it's really hard to have all hands meetings. Not that I like meetings anyway, but, but nonetheless, and it's a blessing because, of course, we can kind of go around the clock working on stuff without overworking folks. So anyway, oops. So the way that we actually work in terms of Chatops is you can see right here, basically there is a chat room. You can see right here a list of a number of the people that are our staff members, sometimes also customers. And basically, we're using this tool called Rocket Chat. Okay? Raise your hand if you've ever used Slack. Okay, that's half the people here. So basically, Rocket Chat is an open source, self-hosted version of Slack. We absolutely love, Slack and its functionality, but of course we are not planning on giving them our customers' pen test data. Henceforth we find a nice open source version so we can host it ourselves. But of course, well, it means you basically have to set it up for yourself, and but it's actually been great because it's open source and we've actually been extending it. Now, Chatops is basically a concept that was originated by GitHub, and GitHub also is a globally distributed company. So I think they have some kind of office in Silicon Valley, but the entire rest of their personnel is located everywhere. So the way that they work is they've actually taken their entire DevOps and they've actually architected things as such so that they can do their entire DevOps operations from their chat room. Okay? With the idea that they can literally, deploy new VMs, patch things, basically do all kinds of different upgrades, configuration changes, all the usual DevOps, Chef, Puppet, Ansible, the usual DevOps stuff. But the thing is, they use this chatbot that's called Hubot, H-U-B-O-T. Essentially, it's just a chatbot that you can also use in IRC. You can also use it, in Campfire, Slack, a whole bunch of other different chat channels. And the way that they actually had it set up was that you could basically, do all those, operations and be able to do new deployments to their website. I mean, literally, they have all kinds of continuous integration stuff, that's running out of the chat. They have network monitoring stuff that's going into the chat, so that a distributed team can actually have full visibility on what each other is doing. Well, when I heard about them doing this, I was like, well, first of all, I said, this actually sounds a lot like how a distributed CTF team works. Because, of course, actually a lot of what we do at ROS is inspired by Capture the Flag. And and for the rest, I figured, this would actually really work great for pen testing. For basically having a distributed team and trying to make things visible. Another thing also that is sort of an added bonus is with radically open security, we also have this thing that, we're really big on openness and transparency. What that means in practice is that we actually invite our customers to join us in the chat room. Now, the really nice thing about Chatops is it means that anytime we're working, as long as we're actually launching our pen testing and launching our reporting and launching all of our other parts of our operations, it means that if the customer is there in the chat room, they can actually observe everything we're doing, which actually has led to a really good formula that customers are extremely happy with, and that actually really having this kind of a chat integrated environment really enables, which is actually much, much harder to do if you're just sort of working in the office, or using other kinds of tools. So I can give you guys some examples, basically, of how this works. And first, you can see right now that with Hubot, so we basically renamed this Rosbot, of course, and we have basically installed a whole bunch of different tools, all kinds of different things that you can use from the chat. So it ranges from the totally useful, things like being able to do various kinds of lookups of different kinds, whoises, and these kinds of things, to to being able to launch scans, for different kinds of pen testing, to the completely stupid and inane. Like, you can't have chat without like cat photos or XKCD. So we've actually got Hubot scripts for all of this. So we've also got sort of this Rosbot shell command that we're using for input sanitization, because of course, yes, like the day I installed this, the first thing my guys tried to do was hack it. And then the second thing they did was Rosbot image me goatsy, at which point I was like, no. No shock porn in the chat channel, please. But anyway, so, but what that means is we can actually, the way that it works is you use CoffeeScript to basically write the integrations between whatever script you would want on the back end, and then the chatbot, the actual interface in the chat. And then essentially you can write your scripts on the back end in whatever language you're comfortable with. So a really simple example of something that we've implemented is Nmap. And it's basically nothing more than just being able to feed a certain number of parameters to Nmap that are supplied on the command line. Of course, obviously, we do need to do input sanitization and do other forms of access control, because especially if customers are in the channels with us, we need to be a little bit careful about who can actually operate which commands within our chat environment. So yes, we thought about that as well. So, but there's a number of really weird and wonderful things that we can do from the chat. Now, anyone who's a pen tester knows that the most annoying part of pen testing is reporting and documentation, it's really time consuming, we just want to hack the things, and then afterwards we're like, do we really have to write it up? Yes, you do. So, but of course, us, like any other pen testing company, we, of course, build a suite to automate this. Because, I know that there's still companies out there that are, cutting and pasting things into Word documents, but I can tell you, but I can tell you from the first couple of months of my company's existence before we had automation that, that cutting and pasting stuff into OpenOffice is not what you want to do. So what we did is we wrote this XML suite. So what it is there's XML templates. And the pen testers can basically just fill in the templates. And they actually really like this because it provides actually a structure for the pen testing and sort of reminds them of what kind of information they have to write down as they're actually doing the testing. And then also another nice thing with XML is if we have, for example, common sort of what we call snippets. So for example, commonly occurring things like cross-site scripting. You always need the same description of like, okay, this is what cross-site scripting is, and this is how you remediate it, and obviously we don't want to reinvent the wheel, so we have a little snippet library, which actually pretty soon we should be open sourcing that. We're still kind of collecting all the snippets together right now. But basically, just so we can also kind of toss that into our XML in the right place, and so that if you just compile, that it just sort of comes out correctly. So another thing about radically open security, by the way, is that we're really into open source. We love open source. And what that means is every tool and framework that we build, once it's ready for the light of day, we open source it. So we basically just try to optimize for the amount of stuff we can give away, just because we can. So our XML pen testing suite is actually in GitHub. So if you guys happen to have a pen testing company and you guys are still working with Microsoft Word or whatnot, feel free to steal our system and use it. It's actually extremely useful. If you guys also want to do automated scanning within a big, huge mega corporation, you guys also need some kind of system, you can just basically steal our stuff, put in your own corporate logo, and it's actually really pretty easy to use. So this is not yet official, by the way, but we're actually having discussions right now with OWASP about potentially trying to also make it an OWASP project. So this hopefully will be happening, I think, in the next, hopefully a couple of weeks. But that would actually be cool and further help to spread and canonize, the fact that this is sort of a free tool automation, for everybody who does web pen testing and other things. So there's all kinds of documentation that we've written that's actually quite decent, and you can sort of see right now it explains how the reports are structured. You can actually see right now an example of how we would be writing up the findings. So we've got things like section ID, different cross references. You can see up here sort of like title, paragraphs, images, stuff. So XML, basically descriptions of what we're doing. And then when we compile it, it turns into something that looks like this. Yeah. So that looks pretty good. So what we do is we've set things up so that you can actually compile this from our chat environment. So the way that it works is, and now we're going back to Rocket Chat, is you can see now we've got this rawspot shell command, PDF build, customer name blurred out, of course, pen test. And then at that point, what's happening is it says rawspot. So first, it's actually doing a git clone. I should also mention, by the way, that we use GitLab as our primary means of version control and sort of collaborative editing within our OS. We use GitLab for our private stuff. We use GitHub for our public stuff, obviously. And we try, of course, to move stuff over from GitLab to GitHub as much as possible. So, but what you can actually see is happening is that when you type in that command, the first thing that it's doing is it's doing a git clone from the GitLab repo. Then what it's doing is it's actually calling the tool chain. So we're basically using sort of XML, XSLT, FOP, that whole system to basically generate our PDF. So you can see that it's compiling the PDF, and then what is actually happening is it's actually committing the PDF that was created back into the repo. Okay? And then what it's doing is it's spitting out a link to the PDF. So basically, what it means is that technical writers and pen testers don't even necessarily have to install the toolchain on their local machines. A lot of them do. But nonetheless, what it means is that they can just issue a command in the chat. It compiles. It spits back a PDF. They click on it. They see it. Easy. So that's the way that we have things set up. So really, a lot of things are just sort of interactions between from Rocket Chat to GitLab, sort of and back. Another thing I should actually also mention that we've been doing, I don't have a slide about this, but we've been doing this increasingly often, is also even using Rocket Chat and Chatops things, also even more for not just also for our tools, but also for project management. And we're actually using Kanban internally to manage our workflow for our entire pen testing process, because of course we've got a lot of embers in the fire and we need to take care of them. So what we're doing is we've even implemented stuff, from the chat room that also even interacts with our the Canboard software that we're using. So we can even be able to get reminders, and this is absolutely awesome. We're implementing right now a reminder system so that if there's a task on our Canboard that has been idle for a week, like for example, if we sent in a quotation to a customer and we haven't heard anything back, it literally injects pings into the chat room to remind us. Yeah, I mean, so it's really just turning this chat environment into sort of this, control room, for people distributed online to just be able to, kind of do all the stuff that you need for the whole pen test process. And it's really powerful, and there's a lot of stuff you can do with that. By the way, also with the reporting stuff, this is also just a quick screenshot of GitLab, just so you can also see how some of the XML stuff is structured. And you can see findings, non-findings, reports, scan. Anyway, that's why probably a little bit less interesting. But in either case, other things that we can do from the chat is tools. So we've already implemented several kinds of tools. Of course, we try to open source them after we build them. One example of a tool that we implemented that's open sourced is a passive scanning tool. So basically what it does is it takes the outputs of Shodan and also of, it used to be scans.io, it's called Census now. And what you can actually do is then basically put in an IP address, and then basically it can spit out the information that it gets from the passive databases, a sort of passive recon-wise, to be able to, tell you, before you even start doing active attacks, what some of the problems might be. Because this is, of course, useful stuff to report to customers. The great thing about this is if you can integrate this stuff with your chat environment, you can launch it from the chat, it can run the scan, it can check the results into GitLab, and then we're also working right now on basically some more basic scanning stuff. We actually just, made a partnership with sort of a large IT insourcing company who also sort of wants open source basic scanning. And we're actually trying to set up a bunch of things right now with a whole suite of the typical compliance scanning kinds of tools like Nmap, NICTO, checking SSL certificates, these kinds of things. So that we can basically do the scan, check it into GitLab, try and write some scripts to actually extract the stuff out that we need, and then put it in the XML template, so that when we compile, it can sort of put the right thing into the right place. So this is sort of the automation that we're busy working on. It's a work in progress, of course, but this is basically the direction that all of our stuff is going. And of course, once it's built, we're planning on open sourcing it. Another really novel thing that you can do with this kind of a pen test Chatops environment is you can do something called red-blue pen testing. So what this is I took, with one of our customers, a development team for, basically a software development team for a product, okay? And the software development team was a number of coders, a number of sysadmins, some DevOps people. And what I did is I split the team in half, and I said, okay, half of you guys are the red team, half of you guys are the blue team, and each team is basically guided by one of our professional pen testers. And we actually had the customer do their own pen test. So we basically turned it into kind of like a CTF competition. We gamified it, and we actually wrote our own scoreboard that we used, of course, Hubot for, the chatbot for, so that if, for example, somebody scored, you can see right now, like for example here, a point for blue for finding missing input validation, and then what we had this thing is you could go, good job, blue. And then you can see now it says incremented blue 24 points. And then it, shows you this like freaking awesome, rainbow unicorn. And we basically just had a pool of images, from the interwebs of silly stuff that we could spit back at them, kind of to gamify it, for when they actually did something. And we basically, it was a 1-week pen test that we did with the customer. We had 10 of their folks, which of course is a huge time investment for them. But you have to remember this is a CTF exercise for them actually. So it's kind of like a secure coding training, in a way. And at the end of the week, they had found 40 findings in their own product. They had found a full attack chain through their own product. And the best part about it was they did it themselves. And during the wrap-up session with, these guys, one of them literally said, I am never going to look at coding the same way again. And that is precisely what we want. And we were able to do this basically for the cost of a 2-week pen test for them, 1 week of actual pen testing, and of course 1 week cleaning up the report that they made, because they made an incredibly humongous mess out of it. So it actually, of course, just took us a week to fix up the XML so we could, give them a decent looking report at the end. But, that's, of course, the real time investment for them, of course, is the time of, 10 people for a week. But you hope that the education that they get out of it, of course, is going to bear its fruits, throughout their continued software development process. But this is really the great thing with the whole chat environment. It really puts you on an equal playing field, just on an equal level, with your customers. And especially if you're an online geographically distributed team like my company is, it means that the customers aren't even outsiders. It's not like we're crowded in an office working together. It's like, because our chat is our primary communications platform, it means that we can actually fully adopt and fully be able to take along the customer in a way that is almost like integrating them with our team. And that's only possible if you're working online in this kind of chat environment. Even if you're working in an office and you tried inviting the customer to your office, I'm not even sure to what extent that would really be practical. But with this, basically all they need to do is just have Rocket Chat open, and they can either passively observe or actively participate. So this is all really pretty great. So what else can we do? Well, there's a whole lot of different things that you can integrate with chat. One example of something else that we did for a customer is we actually implemented a spear phishing suite. We're still cleaning it up at some point when it's ready. Of course, I also want to open source this as well. But the point is that the way that it works is that we had a number of scripts, so that what you could do is actually create instrumented phishing emails. And then what would happen is the phishing emails would then have links, of course, to something on a web server that could track image views, and of course also that could track clicks. And we actually had that tied in with our chat environment. So, and also the customer can even observe this in real time, so that every time one of their employees either did an image view or clicked, we were able to see it in real time. So, and again, it's just giving a level of visibility into what we're doing that is, cool. Quite frankly, it's actually, and it's fun, because you can basically launch it, and then you can basically just sit there and watch, the clicks come in, and watch the image views come in. So that's actually really pretty fun. Other things that you can launch from the chat environment, of course, I already mentioned things like scanning and exploitation tools. So any of your standard, scanning tools, basically, that you would use for your pen testing, you can probably automate it with Hubot so that you can launch it from the chat. So Nmap, W3AF, SQL map, Hydra for brute forcing stuff. This is all within the realm of possibility. Some of the stuff we've already implemented from the chat. Other things are on our to-do list. We're working on it. But in either case, this is what we envision. Things like recon, so who is Google? Also, as a joke, we implemented let me Google that for you. But that wasn't good enough. Then we had to implement let me DuckDuckGo that for you. So, yeah, and our passive scanning suite. Things like cryptography. Things like hash cracking. Why shouldn't we be able to launch, hash cracking from the chat? It's just convenient. So other things that we can do: email and SMS integration. I mentioned spear phishing already. Basically anything in your operations where you would need to launch it, and it makes it sort of helpful. If you can. Another thing also is that if you have a team working together, you're not going to get the question of like, hey, what have you done already? you know, and that makes also coordinating a team really, really easy because they can each just look in the chat room, see what the other person has done, look in GitLab. Oh, another thing I should mention is we also have Git hooks in the chat room. So every time somebody does a commit to GitLab, we basically get a report of that. So both you know, the pen testing team members as well as the customer basically can see sort of blow by blow every single check-in that we're making, which means that we don't even necessarily need to ask the question, have you already, you know, done whatever, because it's just, you know, it's obvious from looking, you know. So yeah, so it just makes stuff really easy. Anyway, so this stuff is really at the core of how we work. I mean, I think it's a new workflow, it's an innovative workflow, and it's one that really is working extremely well for us. I hope we can continue to be able to sort of package these things up nicely and be able to put it out there on GitHub, so hopefully anybody can use it. I mean, I would absolutely love to help my competitors. You know, please use our tools. They're actually really quite awesome, you know. And if we, as Radically Open Security, can also help to make you know, the rest of the industry, including our competitors, more awesome, then that's even better. So please, you know, have a look at our tools, you know. And it's also open source. So if you guys do happen to use it and it's useful for you, and you think, hey, this is great, but I really wish there was also blank, you know, I mean, put in a feature request, or even, you know, if you do implement it, you know, share the love and, you know, give it back to us, you know, with a suitable open source license as well. I mean, it's basically just open source. So anyway, this is, I guess, my talk. I hope you guys have found it thought-provoking, and I would be extremely happy to answer any questions. Are there any questions? Nope. Yes?
What did you deploy Rocket Chat with, automation-wise?
How do we deploy it?
So it's like almost like a single point of everything. So you have
Yeah.
So how do you deploy it?
Well, right now, I mean, yeah, I mean, well, we just installed it basically on a VM. So I mean, it's not that we've set up things DevOps-wise yet to kind of package it up so you can just. At some point, I would really like for us to use some kind of, you know, Docker, Chef, Ansible, you know, thing, so that we can basically make it easier for other people to set up. Of course, right now, I mean, we're still sort of innovating it and figuring it out. So I mean, right now we've still been installing everything manually. So
I'm also building it and trying to automate it. So maybe we can share on that.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Contact me after, please. Yeah. So, no, but if anybody else is actually interested in trying out this stuff and working with it, I mean, I would certainly be very happy, you know, to work with you guys and think along with you guys, because, you know, I mean, ultimately it's better for us too. I mean, the more brains you have, you know, the cooler stuff winds up being. So, are there any more questions? Nope. Okay. Well,
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm not from this industry, but I'm just wondering, why would you make it non-profit?
Why would I make it nonprofit? I didn't mention that because I was trying not to make this a sales pitch. But you know, in a nutshell, the reason why I made ROS nonprofit is because the market leaders, at least in the Netherlands, for the security industry are quite commercial, and not everybody in the hacker community likes that. You know, because hackers are very idealistic. I mean, much like the hacker community has a lot of close ties with the open source community. We just want to make stuff better. We actually don't really care about profit and money, not usually, you know, nor making it for our bosses. That's completely demotivating, and who cares? So no, seriously. You know, so I wanted to set up something that basically, if anybody got rich, I really wanted it to be a charity, you know, something for the community. So I decided that we would support the NLNet Foundation. The NLNet Foundation is basically a foundation that's been around for 15 years. They've supported projects like Tor and EFF and GNU and Jitsi and academic research and, you know, all the kinds of stuff that like makes the internet better. You know, and we set ourselves up as this thing called a fiscal fundraising institution, in Dutch, a fiscaal fondswerf en instelling, which means that contractually we have to give 90% of our profits to a foundation, and NLNet is that foundation. It's actually a construction we stole from the churches. No, seriously. Because churches sometimes want to do commercial spin-offs, and then they want to get the money tax-free back to the church again. A famous example of this in the Netherlands is a language institute called Regina Caeli. And there's these nuns that are called the Nonnen van Vught. This is actually the language institute where Queen Maxima learned and very much improved her Dutch. This is actually an example of a fiscal fundraising institution in the Netherlands. So we basically stole that idea, but we just decided to make NLNet our church. So that's basically how we're set up, and and as for the rest of it, openness, transparency, open source. I mean, this was definitely just like an attempt. ROS is an attempt to reclaim, security consultancy for the purposes of really making the world better through security, because security is for the common good. It should be for the common good, And if we can optimize for helping customers, our employees and society instead of optimizing for shareholders, investors, and founders. I mean, ultimately, we hope to create a vehicle that will be better for society in the end. Also, on a meta level, the whole concept of a not-for-profit company, we figure if we can make this work in the computer security space, who knows, maybe in like 4 or 5 years, we might be able to also teach workshops explaining how other people can do fiscal fundraising institutions in other fields, like healthcare, agriculture. So if we can just demonstrate this as being a new kind of social enterprise, maybe it'll be a cool idea that other people can run with. Surprisingly enough, actually, as strange as this all sounds, because this is all really strange and weird and different, this has actually really been taking off. ROS is now 2 years old, but we already have 40 freelancers working together. And we've already had more than 30 customers, a third of which are repeat customers, and at least probably 2/3 of which are sort of the usual suspects in terms of like Dutch corporate life, government, and the other third is sort of like little not-for-profit hippie organizations that we're willing to help for cost price. So yeah, so that's kind of how it's gone. We're hoping to shake up the industry, with the way that we're working. Because what we hope is that when the customer can look over our shoulder, we hope that they're going to get so spoiled, by having that kind of view, that kind of visibility, that amount of knowledge transfer into their organizations, that I am hoping that they're going to go back to our competitors and say, hey, Radically Open Security is offering this peek over our shoulder service. Can you guys do that too? Yeah, and then they're of course going to have a choice. They can offer it, or their customers might walk away, And in such a way, we're hoping to make the entire industry more open and transparent. We're trying to offer that alternative and raise the bar for everyone. And I hope that we can do it. So anyway, that's enough about the company. Anyway, thank you so much for your time. And if anybody has any more questions for me, I'd be happy to take them afterwards. So thank you.